Election integrity, oversight of the Department of Homeland Security, and America's talking. This is the Center Square Daily for Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. I'm your host, Greg Bishop. Thanks to the Center Square publisher Chris Krug for filling in my absence on Monday. We start with election integrity, with the FBI warrant in Fulton County expected to be released today following federal court action. Now, in a motion filed in federal court, Fulton County is asking to see details of that affidavit that was used to file and obtain a search warrant for that county's election hub near Atlanta, Georgia. The legal action came a week after FBI agents searched the election center and left with boxes of ballots and other files connected to a 6-year-old election that President Donald Trump still contends was stolen. Now, election oversight is among the efforts of Republicans, and they're focusing on voter ID. And this is an issue that we're going to hear a lot more about as we're in the 2026 election year. Midterm elections very important, and a lot is at stake, including who controls Congress. But the oversight continues in Congress to see what kinds of things they can do as Republicans look to shore up election integrity. Wisconsin U.S. Representative Brian Steele, during a hearing this morning, laid out a list of demands that Republicans have for election integrity.
Article 1, Section 4 of the United States Constitution grants the power to regulate the time, place, and manner of federal elections. However, the Constitution also gives Congress the power to make or alter those regulations at any time. The common sense reforms House Republicans are proposing today will ensure it remains easy to vote, but hard to cheat. Elections should end on Election Day. You need a photo ID to cast a ballot. You need to be a citizen to vote. You need an audible paper trail, and you shouldn't mail a ballot to people that don't request them. These are common sense. It's why they're popular. It's time we make them standard in American elections.
Now, while Representative Steele says it may be common sense, Democrats pushing back, and they say this is only going to harm election integrity. New York U.S. Representative Joseph Morell, he said that the Trump administration is looking to take over the elections.
Republicans know they have one hope at winning the next election: change the rules of the game. This scheme is not just how Republicans plan to take over our elections, it's how they plan to take over our country, to irrevocably destroy the American principles: peace, prosperity, equality that we all hold dear. Why would we give her access to personal, private information of American voters? What's more, this bill gives Pam Bondi the power to unilaterally withhold all election funding to any state she chooses. I ask the American people this: do you want Donald Trump running your elections? Do you want Pam Bondi or Kristi Noem running your elections?
Now, some of the ongoing debates that are happening in state houses across the country include the federal government looking at voter rolls in various states. And you also have pending litigation challenging some states' ability to have elections count up to 2 weeks after the election. So with these ongoing policy issues being debated at the State House, you can see the interest of those in Congress looking to bring about some uniformity in election code, but the continued pushback from Democrats saying that it would harm voter turnout and election integrity. But let's take a look at just a brief bit of data here. States with something as similar as voter ID. 36 states request or require voter ID at the polls. 14 others, they use a method of signature check at the polls, and that's according to the National Conference of State Legislators. Again, as we're in an election year with the midterm election being vital, it's going to be paramount for election authorities locally to know what the rules are for federal elections, and will the loggerheads in Congress work on a deal and figure something out, or will they continue to debate this well beyond the 2026 elections? So from election security oversight to immigration enforcement oversight, I talked earlier today with the Center Square's Therese Boudreaux.
Well, the Homeland Security bill, again, that's been an issue for Democrats ever since that second fatal shooting in Minneapolis. And so, if you recall, we have 11 out of those 12 federal funding bills completed right now. But due to this controversy over ICE, which is within Department of Homeland Security, they replaced when they passed these bills, they replaced the Homeland Security bill with a continuing resolution. So that means that right now, DHS is subsisting off of essentially funding from last year and is just on cruise control. But that was only a 2-week CR. And so we're getting to the end of that on February 13th. That's going to run out. And so we're really getting down to the wire here, but lawmakers have not seemed to reach a solution. So Democrats have laid out a list of 10 demands, essentially, 10 different reforms that they want to see in the Homeland Security funding bill before they agree to pass it. In the Senate, they need 7 Democratic votes at least. Republicans do to pass anything so that it goes so the filibuster is overcome. And so last night, the White House released a compromise version. Basically, there's not a lot of details out about it, but we do know that it did not include all of Democrats' demands. And so we had Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries come out and say, this isn't doable. We're not going to do this. So right now, what we're looking at probably is another CR because lawmakers clearly need more time to figure something out. Now, there are some things in Democrats' demands that Republicans probably will accept, such as body cameras, body-worn cameras for the agents. Possibly, there's been some movement towards having them display ID, making sure that they can't, come into churches or schools or daycares. But one thing in particular that the White House and Republicans have said it's absolutely a non-starter, is to require agents to get a judicial warrant on top of an immigration court warrant in order to detain anybody. Republicans have said there's no way that ICE agents and Customs and Border Control can do their job if they have to go through this onerous process, which has never been required before. So again, really right now, because there just does not seem to be a solution in sight, and Republicans can't really count on enough Democrats to fold over pressures that the Department of Homeland Security will essentially shut down if they don't get this done. Thune is saying we're going to have another stopgap.
Well, Therese, obviously, these are some really complex issues that are going to take possibly changes of federal policy when it comes to oversight of immigration and customs enforcement. But with that looming deadline, very unclear if they're actually going to get that done. This morning, during a House hearing, U.S. Representative Andrew Garbarino, he was chairing a oversight hearing of the Department of Homeland Security. And I want to get your reaction to what he had to say here.
Let me be clear. Shutting down DHS makes America less safe and negatively impacts thousands of federal employees like those at TSA and CISA. The Department of Homeland Security is the nation's largest federal law enforcement agency. It is this committee's duty, regardless of administration, to conduct oversight. We need to examine how DHS components are enforcing the law and ensure they have the resources in place to do work safely, effectively, and properly.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, so he's essentially echoing Republicans' views that, look, if this all, falls through, and if we see a partial shutdown of DHS, then the things that are really going to be negatively impacted are agencies like FEMA, like the Coast Guard, like TSA, whereas Democrats aren't even really going to get their wish to see ICE scaled back because in the Republicans' budget reconciliation bill that passed in July, the One Big Beautiful Bill, as it was called, it boosted ICE's funding by $75 billion. And to put that in perspective, the Homeland Security bill that's at stake right now, the annual funding for ICE that it gave was the same as last year, which is $10 billion. So they're set for a very long time, which means that if Democrats are, digging in on this and they refuse to take, any kind of deal, it doesn't include all of their demands, then it's really the agencies that they don't have a problem with that are going to be impacted. Whereas ICE is pretty much just going to function as usual without any of the reforms that they want. So again, it's a really complicated situation where I think Republicans are getting frustrated with Democrats and saying, look, you're not going to win by dragging this out and by refusing to compromise on some of these things. So just come to the table with us, and we're open to some of the things that you want, but some of the things we just think are untenable, and you're just going to have to accept that. But again, that's not really Democratic leaders don't seem to be swallowing that right now. And so there's not really much hope, I don't think, that we're going to reach a compromise Homeland Security bill for fiscal year 2026 this week. We're going to see either, most likely, another continuing resolution, another CR to basically punt the deadline yet again, or we're going to see a partial shutdown. And as that lawmaker said, that's not a win for anybody.
Well, Therese, I think this kind of was already addressed with some of your comments there, just in your watching of how this plays out. But he also this morning, during that oversight hearing, Democrat U.S. Representative Benny Thompson, he had this to say.
This hearing is just the start of a reckoning for the Trump administration and its weaponization of DHS against American citizens and the principle our country stands for. DHS, led by Secretary Kristi Noem, must be held accountable for its lawlessness immigration operation. They are reckless, creating chaos in our communities, terrorizing adults and children alike, and undermining our moral authority as a nation of liberty and rule of law.
Just the start of a reckoning, also naming Kristi Noem. You have other Democrats who have pushed for Noem to be ousted as the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Do you think that that's possibly what's going to have to happen here for Democrats to get on board?
Well, it's definitely something that dozens and dozens in both chambers have called for. Trump does not seem to be leaning that way. Since they've been calling for this over the past week or so, he has expressed his support of Noem and of the job she's doing. He has, however, done things like he sent Tom Homan in to Minneapolis, where a lot of this heat is coming from, to try to de-escalate the situation. But if you're asking, are we going to see Kristi Noem ousted? The answer is probably no. And also, it is worth noting that is not within the list of 10 all or nothing demands that Democrats gave. So I think it's something they really want, but I think that most of them recognize that this is something we can push for, and we can feel that maybe the American public is on our side, but that's probably not where they're going to dig in their heels.
Again, we're looking at $64 billion in taxpayer spending, but that includes a $10 billion bonus for ICE with that deadline coming up February 13th. Therese, obviously, it's going to be an interesting couple of days here as members of Congress continue holding hearings. Do you think that we'll see a late night vote to have some kind of continuing resolution somewhere on the field here in Congress? And when will taxpayers have some certainty to know if, for instance, the Transportation Security Administration is going to be able to stay funded and keep the flights safe?
Yeah, so Thune is planning to have a vote on a continuing resolution, and if that would be the case, that would probably be late Thursday night, because a lot of members of Congress are going to Munich on Friday, and again, that's the deadline for when the CR runs out, the current CR runs out. So people can be watching that and seeing what happens there. Again, very unlikely that there's going to be a successful vote, or possibly even a vote at all on the Homeland Security bill, since there just hasn't been enough changes to it. There's no final, proposed product as of now. So if I was an American, I would be watching Thursday night. That's probably when we're going to figure out what's happening. And yes, I would say Thursday night.
And obviously, the one of the recent fuller government shutdowns that we had impacted TSA. And we did see weeks go by where they were having, continued issues, but then those issues compounded more and more. So we'll see what kind of pressure that potential builds as we watch closely how your tax dollars are being debated in the halls of Congress. Therese Boudreaux, reporter for the Center Square, greatly appreciate your time. And now, time for America's Talking Network with clips from across the country in various state houses, where we'll start in Georgia. Legislators there hearing more about errors in the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program.
Just so you know, there's inadvertent household errors that are things where, again, I didn't project my income correctly, but I wasn't trying to deceive. And then there's intentional program violations, which you can get sanctions for. That can just start on you, not being eligible for benefits that you would otherwise be eligible for under an IPD sanction, up to prosecution for, egregious, I would say, or true criminal benefit theft.
But we probably could increase, the penalties for it.
With that potential of looking at increased penalties for SNAP failure to follow the law, you've also got the prospect of taxpayers in all states looking to possibly have to pick up the difference between the error rate that the federal government is saying is acceptable and a much higher error rate in some of these states. In Georgia, they've got double digit. In Illinois, they've got double digit. And if they don't bring that down, the state's taxpayers are going to have to make up for that difference in the cost that the federal taxpayers are covering. That's going to be an ongoing issue with state houses across the country when it comes to federal taxpayer funds and how they're used for these types of subsidy programs. Meanwhile, in Washington state, an amendment was brought forward for some grant accountability, and you had Democrats saying that the amendment could possibly add to the burden of auditing certain types of grant recipients. But Republican State Representative Deb Mangeras, she said that the much-needed amendment is important because taxpayers are clamoring for more oversight on taxpayer-funded grants.
At the federal level, if an organization, a nonprofit, receives more than $750,000 in a year, they're required to have a independent audit called a single audit. A lot of you may have known. So putting this at $10 million is way above that. We have our state auditor that is in charge of all the cities, counties, a lot of work. We need to move closer to having third-party independent auditors at a much lower level, maybe even to match the federal dollar limit of $750,000. Our constituents are screaming about this, and we need to answer them. Please vote yes on this amendment.
Despite that plea for a yes vote on that amendment did not pass in the state of Washington. Now, further down on the West Coast in California, Planned Parenthood looking to possibly get a $90 million check from California taxpayers, as you have the ongoing questions of federal funding for abortion services. And that debate continues in California. Democrat State Representative Maggie Krell, she supported the effort to give $90 million to Planned Parenthood.
This $90 million fund by SB 106 will guarantee that no more Planned Parenthood health centers close in California. What this means is the 25,000 patients who seek care at a Planned Parenthood every single week will continue to be able to get their care, whether that's pregnancy testing, whether that's STI testing and treatment, whether that's cervical cancer screenings, whether that's men seeking vasectomies, whether that's sexual assault survivors going for help, whether that's human trafficking survivors going to have someone to talk to.
But Republican State Representative Carl DeMaio, he said that this is really an issue about choice, and he questions one particular entity set to get that $90 million check from California taxpayers.
It's between you, your family, and your faith. But let's be clear. This isn't about choice or access to abortion services. The language in this bill is written in such a way that one single politically connected supporter receives $90 million with an extraordinary lack of oversight, audit, and financial responsibility. Why? Why are we doing this? Why for this specific group?
Obviously, the debate continues on that issue all across the country, and that is America's Talking, with clips from state houses across the nation. From my studios in Central Illinois, I'm Greg Bishop. Join us Wednesday for more stories impacting you, the taxpayer, from across the country, only with the Center Square Daily.